Tonight, frustration and backlash over the new pipeline deal.
I hope people today feel a lot more confident than Canada Works than they did a couple of days ago.
Alberta's premier booed by her own party as Ottawa does damage control in BC. Airbus orders immediate repairs to some 6,000 planes after a JetBlue plane suddenly lost altitude. The culprit? Intense solar radiation. A British pop star takes on Ticketmaster and wins.
Protecting the ability for fans to get in the door is a way that we're protecting art.
Why some of her fans who bought pricey resale tickets are getting refunds.
From CBC News, this is The National with Erica Johnson.
Thanks for joining us. With the pipeline agreement between Alberta and Ottawa officially signed, both governments are now out trying to sell the plan and the partnership to their counterparts, their constituents, even their own parties. Danielle Smith was booed by her party base as members gather for the annual general meeting. Many there frustrated with the Liberals. And that sentiment is alive across the BC border too, where the federal government is holding high-level talks. We'll dive into those in a moment, but let's start with that scene at the United Conservative Party's annual general meeting. Sam Sampson with why so many in the room say they just don't trust this deal.
Now that Danielle Smith has sold Ottawa on Alberta's energy goals, she has to sell her base on working with Ottawa, which might prove difficult.
I support a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. I know we might have a bit of a difference of opinion on that, but I hope people today feel a lot more confident than Canada Works than they did a couple of days ago.
The Memorandum of Understanding Smith and Mark Carney signed Thursday spells out Ottawa's support for a new bitumen pipeline if Alberta commits to a higher industrial carbon price, lower methane emissions, and there's investment in carbon capture and storage. Smith is calling it a new chapter for Alberta-Ottawa relations, but not everyone at her party's annual general meeting is as optimistic.
The last 10 years, it's been clear that Alberta is never going to be valued by the rest of, by the major decision makers within the Ottawa power structure.
Mark Carney's just stringing us along. He's not a fan of Alberta.
And then there's the separatists. Polling shows most Albertans want to stay in Canada, but some want to avoid working with Ottawa altogether, instead forming their own country and getting pipelines built through the U.S.
It's just a complete sellout of the province of Alberta, and anybody who thinks this is a good deal for anybody is a complete idiot.
Well, the Premier thinks it's a good deal.
Well, I stand by what I said.
Some do say Smith made the right call to get Alberta back on track.
We fought and we won. That doesn't mean that we're done fights on maybe equalization or other things. Like, we are in an ongoing battle to be treated with respect, to be, at the table as a partner, as one of the biggest economic drivers.
We may get another sense of support for this Alberta-Ottawa deal on Saturday when the UCP votes on its resolutions, signaling what's important to this group, one of which explicitly supports new oil and natural gas pipelines. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
The Liberals are also facing internal strife as they try to paint this energy deal as an economic win for Canadians. As Olivia Stefanovich shows us, they're facing questions of party unity after one cabinet minister's resignation.
We're absolutely unified.
Liberal MPs insist the federal government's historic energy agreement with Alberta isn't tearing their caucus apart.
Quite unified. There's always discussions. We're standing united.
I think where Liberal MPs are at the end of this week in British Columbia is we're united behind the Prime Minister.
But the NDP is seizing on longtime environmentalist Stephen Guilbeault's resignation from cabinet in protest of the Memorandum of Understanding, prioritizing a new oil pipeline from Alberta through British Columbia.
Good on him for standing up for his values.
So the Liberal MPs who are watching this unfold, they must be asking themselves, how could this be the path for the future?
The federal natural resources minister spent the day in BC doing damage control.
Minister Hodgson and I had a frank exchange. It was a good conversation.
In an interview with CBC Radio's The House, BC Premier David Eby says he made it clear if a pipeline is approved by Ottawa, coastal First Nations in his province could pull their support for other major multi-billion-dollar projects already underway, including in liquefied natural gas.
So I underlined for the minister the importance of him and the prime minister sitting down as quickly as possible with coastal First Nations to outline their position on this, to take the temperature down.
Tim Hodgson says he wants to sit down with coastal First Nations after first brushing off concerns from those leaders about whether they'd be able to make it in person.
It's just impossible for them to get from where they are in the coast of BC to the time and place of the meeting. So,
it's called Zoom. It's called Zoom.
Well,
it's a wonderful. I think that's what we're using.
Hodgson says those comments made Thursday on Power and Politics were a, quote, poor choice of words. The coastal First Nations say they asked for a meeting with Hodgson last month, but he declined. A new meeting with the federal government hasn't been scheduled just yet. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
Airlines around the world are working to fix a software issue on some 6,000 Airbus planes. A former pilot says, while it sounds alarming, travelers shouldn't be concerned about their safety on their upcoming flight.
A pilot is not going to take an airplane that's unairworthy.
The company says the A320 needs an immediate software change discovered after a JetBlue plane suddenly lost altitude and made an emergency landing last month. Several people were injured. Airbus says intense solar radiation may corrupt data that's used for flight controls. While the repair is causing delays, Air Canada says it doesn't expect any impact. In Winnipeg, a registered sex offender is facing new charges after an intruder hid in a washroom stall of an elementary school and grabbed a child.
When a student exited an adjacent stall that they were using, the man grabbed hold of the child. The child fought back and managed to break free from the suspect, ran to a teacher, and made a report.
This happened Thursday afternoon, and police said the child did not require medical care. The suspect fled the scene and was later arrested in a mall parking lot. A 28-year-old has been charged with assault, forcible confinement, and 2 counts of failing to comply with a prohibition involving children. Tonight, the federal and BC governments are promising millions in new spending to fight crime in that province linked to extortion. In different parts of Canada, people have faced real harm from this wave of illegal threats. Mira Baines begins with a high-profile arrest in India that might help investigations here.
On social media, the man accused of orchestrating a string of extortion-related shootings at a cafe in Surrey, BC. He's now under arrest in India. Delhi police say Bandhu Man Singh Sekon was taken into custody earlier this week, accused in an international arms trafficking case in India.
The task force is aware of the statements made that there is maybe a connection to a file here, and we are working on that, and we expect to have some information in the coming days to substantiate that.
Investigators in India say he came to Canada on a work visa and then fled. Last year, Peel police charged Sekon with a series of guns and conspiracy offences. Cat's Cafe in Surrey is owned by Bollywood star Kapil Sharma and has been fired at 3 times. No one was injured. Indian police allege Sekon provided logistics, including the getaway car. It's just one of more than 100 cases linked to extortion in BC's Lower Mainland, mostly targeting South Asian businesses. 1 man and 2 women have been injured in separate incidents.
People need to know that we are unified, that police are coordinated, that they have the resources they need.
The federal and provincial governments now announcing $1 million to support victims. But there's sharp criticism that police are not doing enough. Shots were fired into a South Asian radio station where this host works.
Because unless they can assure the victims that they can provide them with resources to ensure them and their families are safe, then people will start paying up and they will not report.
A new regional drug enforcement team is being created to help tackle gangs, which police say in some cases are linked to extortion.
By sharing information and resources, they'll be able to act faster and more effectively.
Police say they are making progress, but aren't saying how many officers are involved.
So, Mira, what kind of progress are they talking about?
The BC Extortion Task Force gave an update. They say police executed a search warrant this morning at a home in the Lower Mainland. They arrested multiple people and seized some items as the investigation continues.
Mira Baines, thanks for this. In Toronto, fire crews are battling what's being called one of the most complex situations in the city's history, a stubborn fire burning between two joined apartment buildings.
The fire is just spreading behind the walls throughout the buildings because of the insulation.
That is leading to a spike in carbon monoxide levels. Both buildings have been evacuated and dozens of fire trucks have been rotating shifts. Firefighters are making careful cuts into the walls to get foam and water inside while not damaging hydro, power and gas lines. Some 400 units have been evacuated. Officials in Hong Kong have arrested 8 more people involved with renovations of a high-rise complex that caught fire. The death toll has risen to 128 and dozens are still unaccounted for. This woman points tearfully at one of the high-rises, saying that's where she lived. Flames spread quickly to 7 buildings due to highly flammable scaffolding and other construction materials. Officials say fire alarms in the complex were not working properly. The United Nations is condemning the killings of 2 Palestinian men shot dead by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank. It was caught on video, which appears to show the men unarmed and surrendering. Tom Perry has that video, and while we won't show you the moment of the shooting, some may still find it disturbing.
A deadly shooting caught on video during a raid in the occupied West Bank. 2 Palestinian men emerging after a standoff with Israeli soldiers and police. The men raised their arms in surrender and their shirts showing they're unarmed. Troops move in, delivering kicks to the men. We won't show you what happens next, but you can hear the gunfire. Both men are shot dead. Police and the military say they were wanted terrorists who had hurled explosives and fired at security forces. Islamic Jihad has reportedly said both men were members of its military wing, but in Jenin, families say the men didn't have to die. It's a brutal and hideous incident, says Mahmoud Assasa, brother of Youssef Assasa, one of the dead men. The United Nations has condemned the killings.
We're appalled by the brazen killing by Israeli border police yesterday of 2 Palestinian men in Jenin in the occupied West Bank in yet another apparent summary execution.
Palestinians in the West Bank have been living under tightened Israeli security and escalating attacks by Israeli settlers. The UN says more than 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in the area since the October 7th attacks. More than 40 Israeli soldiers and civilians have been killed in that same period. The Israeli military and police say they're investigating the shooting in Jenin, though human rights groups put little faith in that process.
It's absolutely clear that the Israeli investigative mechanism is unwilling and unable to hold Israeli forces accountable for these types of crimes.
Israel's far-right national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, went on social media to offer his full support to the soldiers and police who fired on the 2 Palestinian men, writing that terrorists must die. Tom Perry, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Flooding across large parts of Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka has claimed more than 300 lives. Here's a rescue in progress in Sri Lanka, where dozens have died in what the government calls the worst natural disaster in recent memory. Millions more are facing hardship across Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia as crews work to restore power and people try to clear streets. The Trump administration is intensifying its immigration crackdown tonight after the shooting of 2 National Guard members. The alleged gunman, now charged with murder, is an Afghan national. And while his exact motive isn't clear, as Katie Nicholson tells us, the government isn't waiting to find out.
They lined the streets in silence as Sarah Beckstrom's body was transferred from hospital. One of 2 West Virginia National Guard members shot Wednesday by a lone gunman 2 blocks from the White House.
She was super kind-hearted, super sweet.
With her death, new charges against the alleged shooter, 29-year-old Ramanullah Lochinwall.
We are upgrading the initial charges of assault to murder in the first degree.
Officials confirmed Lochinwall worked with the U.S. government in Afghanistan and was among the roughly 86,000 Afghans evacuated to the U.S. as it withdrew from the country in 2021. A Department of Justice audit found those Afghans were subject to multi-agency vetting. Lochinwall was just granted asylum in April. The U.S. president bristled when asked why he blamed the Biden administration.
Because they let him in. Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here.
In a Thanksgiving night post, the president vowed to permanently pause migration from what he called third world countries, but didn't specify any. The administration also announced a full-scale, rigorous re-examination of every green card for every alien from every country of concern, and pointed to a June presidential proclamation listing these 19 countries. Among them, Cuba, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. Those who work to resettle Afghans who helped the U.S. critical of these moves.
They also know that the president and the vice president and the FBI director are trying to use this as a political cudgel, which is pretty crazy because I know that both the Biden administration and the Trump administration approved various things for this man at any given time.
And now the State Department has paused visa issuance for all people traveling on Afghan passports, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service announced that it has halted all asylum decisions until it can ensure that every migrant is vetted and screened, it says, to a maximum degree.
And Katie, what more do we know about the other National Guard member who was shot?
Andrew Wolf remains in critical condition after undergoing surgery. His father has asked for prayers for his son, and the suspect in this case is also still in hospital. In fact, CBS is reporting he is hooked up to a ventilator.
Katie Nicholson in Washington tonight. As the holiday season approaches, is the Buy Canadian movement dwindling?
If I had the choice, I would pick Canadian first.
What it could mean for small businesses next. A rising pop star takes on Ticketmaster and wins.
We could be nice to each other, nice to each other.
How Olivia Dean stuck up for her fans. Plus, a high-altitude teddy goes missing.
One moment he's there, and the next he's gone.
The search for the intrepid adventurer in our moment. We're back in 2. These are not the frantic shoppers we used to see on Black Friday. Those stampedes now endangered as more shopping moves online and discounts are offered weeks in advance.
There's some okay stuff out there, but I don't know. Sadly, it seems like it's online that's where the better deals are being had.
At Toronto's Eaton Centre, one shopper remarked that Black Friday seems to start a little after Halloween. So what happens to the Buy Canadian movement when U.S. chains offer tempting discounts? Jennifer LaGrassa found that tight budgets can overrule a patriotic purchase.
'Tis the season for holiday spending, but are Canadian-made items high on the list?
It's better to buy Canadian, as we're trying to do, and just to keep supporting.
I wouldn't say it's absolutely priority, but if I had the choice, I would pick Canadian first.
Especially when I go shopping now, I search for Canadian.
That Buy Canadian impulse peaked earlier this year in response to U.S. tariffs and Donald Trump's talk of Canada as a 51st state. But some research suggests it's been waning.
We're more into a traditional kind of cold economic war rather than a hot one with antagonistic rhetoric.
Recent data from Statistics Canada found nearly 70% of businesses did not experience an increase in sales of their Canadian products in the past 6 months. Other research suggests a monetary limit on how deep into their pockets shoppers will dig. In a recent Bank of Canada survey, 3/4 of survey respondents indicated they are not willing to pay more than an additional 10% for a made-in-Canada product.
Ideally, if you can get Canadian, I'd get Canadian. Just, you gotta keep the budget in mind.
But some businesses say the trend hasn't slowed down for them.
We felt a huge shift in people shopping, starting to buy Canadian. Since January, we've been up by almost double every month.
Every single month, we've seen like an increase in month over month from last year's sales.
Many analysts say whether shoppers lean into buying Canadian depends on what's on the wish list, with items like toys and tech usually made elsewhere. But whatever consumers' shopping intentions might be, retailers will be hoping that the Buy Canadian movement lights up sales this holiday season. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Toronto.
The ticket resale debate is back in the spotlight after a pop star speaks out.
Already know I can leave it alone.
How Olivia Dean took on Ticketmaster. Next. Ottawa is fast-tracking a new Quebec port.
It's going to become a huge industrial zone.
But is it the right move? And
Bienvenido, Papa Leone.
Pope Leo goes abroad with a message of peace. The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. A very close call in Northern Ontario earlier this week. Police sharing this video of an officer jumping into a ditch to avoid getting hit by a vehicle sliding on the highway. A reminder for drivers to be extra careful on the roads during the winter months. The 21-year-old driver has been charged with failing to slow down and proceed with caution for emergency vehicles. Ticketmaster says it will partially refund fans who bought concert tickets on the resale market for hundreds more than face value. This after pop star Olivia Dean called out the company for being exploitative. And as Magda Gebrselassie tells us, there's hope this could spark a more permanent change.
Already know I can leave it alone.
Olivia Dean took on ticketing companies and got her way, getting refunds for her fans frustrated over sky-high resale prices.
Y'all didn't have to sell out them Olivia Dean tickets like that.
Ticket prices were crazy.
The UK artist called Ticketmaster, Live Nation, and AEG vile, demanding be better.
I do think she's part of a generation of pop artists that is inheriting this Ticketmaster monopoly.
This pop culture podcaster says it's crucial the Grammy-nominated Dean and others put their foot down.
Protecting the ability for fans to get in the door is a way that we're protecting art.
Dean's call-out did the trick. Ticketmaster is now capping all future ticket resale prices of her tour and partially refunding fans who paid for pricey resale tickets. The platform says artists can use face value exchange that only allows fans to resell tickets at face value. Ticketmaster has been under pressure. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission is suing it and its parent company for alleged illegal resale tactics. In the UK, a proposed law would make it illegal to resell tickets for more than face value. Ontario politicians have floated something similar.
It's impossible to enforce because people can exchange tickets outside the jurisdiction.
Another solution, connecting the ticket to the buyer's name and checking ID at the venue.
Because only the person who buy a ticket can attend the venue.
It's the greatest show in sports.
Others have their own ideas. The popular Savannah Bananas, a U.S. team that mixes baseball and entertainment, is launching a verified secondary ticket marketplace.
We've had thousands of fans who have been either scammed or have paid thousands of dollars for tickets. To see a family of four that could get 4 tickets for under $200, that they're paying thousands of dollars, that hurts.
It seems Olivia Dean felt that hurt for fans.
We could be nice to each other, nice to each other.
Pushing to keep concerts accessible for all. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. Victims of Jeffrey Epstein are counting the days until the U.S. government releases its files.
They want people to be exposed who deserve to be exposed.
why they and others might not get all they want. But first, is Canada's new major port project being built in the right place?
The fate of the container shipping on the Canadian East Coast is now partially jeopardized.
Eli Glasner looks at the factors at play along the St. Lawrence, including the growing size of the ships, the depth of the water, and the ever-present concerns for the environment.
Boxes, boxes, and boxes, from road salt to sugar, medicine to mountain bikes, for much of Ontario and Quebec and other parts of Canada. If it's in a shipping container, it comes through the Port of Montreal.
This, believe it or not, is a small terminal. So this is just one part of the massive port complex, which handles about 1.5 million containers a year.
Hello. In September, Ottawa announced plans to fast-track an expansion to the port as part of the major projects of national interest.
The Government of Canada stands ready to ensure that the remaining approvals are expedited as quickly as possible.
But the Port of Montreal say that they're reaching capacity in just a few years. So, the province of Quebec and the Major Projects Office, the federal government, have a plan to expand another port, Contrecoeur, just down the St. Lawrence River. But is that the best port to pick?
50 kilometers down the river is the project meant to keep Montreal's port thriving, the Contrecoeur Terminal Expansion. The glossy promotional video touts Contrecoeur's advantages, access to the same rail lines and highways that feed Montreal. Although the land was purchased nearly 40 years ago, the cost for the long-planned expansion has already ballooned to $2.3 billion. With the announcement came protests and 2 separate lawsuits, one arguing the Major Projects Office is overruling environmental concerns, the other a class action lawsuit from communities along the river worried about erosion from increased shipping traffic. As winter makes an early appearance, work on Contrecoeur has already begun.
Sometimes you can see ships in between those trees.
So the ships go up and down. That's the
Yeah.
St. Lawrence River.
Exactly.
Ellen Reeves grew up here. She lives on the river and is now a spokesperson for the citizens group fighting the expansion.
So all of this forest is going to be
Destroyed.
gone.
It's 13,000 trees. It's a lot.
With an impact assessment report predicting an increase in truck traffic to as much as 1,200 per day, she has serious concerns about our community's future.
It's going to become a huge industrial zone, and it's not going to be the beautiful little town on the St. Lawrence River.
Meanwhile, she says the surrounding area, home to a bird sanctuary and the endangered copper red horsefish, is at risk.
It should be considered like a treasure. It's an exceptional site, and they're going to destroy it for what exactly? The Port of Montreal is not full. We don't know in 5 years where we're going to be. If Trump is gone, all the manufacturers might just go back exporting and importing from the States.
So if you go here is our
Julie Gascon is the CEO for the Montreal Port Authority, responsible for the original port and the Contrecoeur expansion. She's been in the industry for over 3 decades.
I wish all my crane had like Christmas lights on them because for me they're so beautiful. They're part of the fabric of Montreal.
But she says the port will reach capacity by 2030, if not sooner.
You've heard Prime Minister Carney.
Our goal for Canada is to double our non-US exports over the course of the next decade.
If you increase by 6% the cargo that used to go to US that now goes to another destination, this port's full. It's full.
Capacity means congestion. In the shipping business, they talk about the deadly D word, dwell, as in how long that container of mountain bikes or mangoes sits on the dock. And so, the expansion down the river.
You've got Highway 30. You've got the railway that's already there. You've got the power with, of course, Hydro. We secured all the power for the terminal. And you have access to a huge amount of markets.
So how do you determine if this $2.3 billion bet will pay off? If you want to talk shipping, Jean-Paul Rodrigue is the guy who wrote the book. Well, books, actually. Talk to me about what you think of this plan to create a new port.
So that project should have taken place 20, 30 years ago. Meanwhile, the position of Montreal became increasingly, you could say, marginalized in terms of the big trade because the ships were getting bigger.
All right, a quick explainer about cargo ships. TEU or TUs is the standard unit of measurement, which represents about an average 20-foot shipping container. According to the Baltic and International Maritime Council, since 2006, ships with a capacity of 12,000 TUs account for 51% of the industry, with orders increasingly going to so-called megaships. What are the sizes of megaships these days?
On the US East Coast, pretty easily 14,000 TU. And Montreal, you talk about 4, 5, 6.
So we're talking about ships that are in common use now, that are double the size of what that Montreal, Quebec seaway can handle. What are the options? We need to physically change the river?
You cannot do that, of course. You cannot dredge the St. Lawrence. There was not an easy, but there was a solution to that, or an alternative, which was the construction of a container terminal facility in the Port of Quebec.
What he's referring to was another port at one time planned for Quebec City called the Laurentia Project, which he says would have made a better major projects candidate.
There was investment committed by one of the largest terminal operators in the world, which was HPH, and the largest Canadian rail line, CN.
In 2021, the federal government vetoed plans for the Quebec City port, mainly due to adverse environmental effects.
When this happened, I see the fate of the container shipping on the Canadian East Coast is now partially jeopardized.
But now an expansion for the Quebec City port, taking advantage of those deep water capabilities, is once again being explored. We asked the Port of Montreal CEO about the Quebec City alternative. So you say 6,500 is about the top of what you can take.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.
But the trend in container shipping is much, much bigger.
The trend is
14,000,
absolutely.
12,000,
yeah.
which can't reach this port.
But the ship that comes to a port will be the right size ship for the port and for the business. The 6,500 to 8,500 TEUs are the workhorse, right?
She says Montreal and Contrecoeur offer services Quebec City can't compete with.
So then what do you do with your container, Eli? Where do you put them? How do you de-stuff them? The Port of Contrecoeur was selected because of that ability. You need a logistic hub.
But Rodrigue worries that hub won't be able to serve the mega ships, a growing part of the industry.
However, there's always an opportunity and a niche for Montreal for these type of services. It's going to have some limitations, and that's why, depending upon where the trend goes, it's going to be increasingly difficult to bring traffic to Montreal.
For Ottawa and the Port of Montreal, the expansion is about strengthening Canada's independence.
Next best option, unfortunately for the Port of Montreal, is the Port of New York. So then if you do that, you lose economic sovereignty.
But as Canada increasingly looks to India and China for trade, the size of their cargo ships could make Montreal and Contrecoeur out of reach.
And so, Eli, how does this potential Quebec City port stack up against what's planned for Contrecoeur?
Well, an important distinction is that the Quebec City project is mainly being backed by QSL, a major transport company. Although it has the support of the federal government, in the recent federal budget, Ottawa talked about catalyzing private investment at ports to diversify trade. So if and when it moves forward, it would certainly add capacity, but nothing comparable to the multi-billion-dollar expansion in Contrecoeur being funded by all levels of government and private sources. And with recent reports suggesting Canadian ports are falling behind their U.S. counterparts, expansions of all kinds might be welcomed.
Okay, thanks for this, Eli.
My pleasure.
The legal deadline for the U.S. government to release its Epstein files is approaching fast.
They worked so hard to hide the files from the public.
Why the public still might not see all there is to see. Next. The U.S. government is on the clock to release its Epstein files. During the first year of Donald Trump's second term, it is the one issue that seems to have bridged the country's otherwise vast political divide. Mike Crawley shows why, despite a law passed in Congress and signed by the president, some Americans worry that not all will be revealed.
The yeas are 427, the nays are 1.
After a near unanimous vote in the U.S. Congress, the clock is now ticking toward the release of the Epstein files. But even though U.S. President Donald Trump has signed the Epstein Files Transparency Act into law, he could still keep some information secret. The new law calls on the Department of Justice to make public all relevant material from its sex trafficking investigation into the late Jeffrey Epstein by December 19th. Despite that looming deadline, some of the survivors of Epstein's abuse and their attorneys are concerned the Trump administration could withhold crucial details using a legal loophole.
The distrust in this administration, because they've worked so hard to hide the files from the public.
And this has been ongoing, despite the fact that he made a promise before the election that he would release the documents.
The law says that all unclassified records, documents, communications, and investigative materials related to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell must be made public. That could include flight logs showing who traveled to and from Epstein's private island, the names of people allegedly connected to Epstein's criminal activities, details of immunity deals, and internal DOJ messages about whether or not to investigate Epstein or any of his associates. Survivors of Epstein's abuse say they want full public disclosure of the files.
Who knew what he was doing, but was too much of a coward to do anything about it?
For months, Trump and his top officials tried to block the push for releasing the files.
You just keep going on the Epstein files. And what the Epstein is a Democrat hoax.
Although the Epstein Files Transparency Act is now law, there's still another hurdle to cross. A clause in the act allowing the Attorney General to withhold items that are part of an ongoing investigation. Just a few days before signing the act, Trump ordered his Attorney General to investigate Epstein's alleged involvement and relationship with 3 prominent Democrats: former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and the founder of LinkedIn, billionaire donor Reid Hoffman. That could give the Trump administration grounds to withhold material.
I think what he's trying to do is to use the dynamic of creating ongoing investigations that would prevent him from releasing the Epstein files in their entirety.
I don't know that they could get away with it if they tried, because eventually the stuff is going to come out.
Eric O'Neill is a national security lawyer and former FBI operative.
It would be foolish of them to try to play games with a legal process to hide information, because eventually it is going to come out. I mean, an investigation has to end at some point. So for every one of those investigations, there's going to be a ticking clock and a request to revisit it after the investigation concludes.
So, will that new investigation actually stop the full release of the files? When reporters asked Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi, she didn't rule it out.
We will continue to follow the law with maximum transparency while protecting victims.
But here's something that contradicts that promise of maximum transparency. The Trump administration could have released the Epstein files months ago without an act of Congress.
We fought the president, the attorney general, the FBI director, the Speaker of the House, and the vice president to get this win.
But advocates for the survivors are not ready to declare victory until and unless the disclosure is complete.
If the government actually listens to the American people, which is what they are supposed to do, and that is their function, they will release all of the information.
It would be horrific, and if the Department of Justice were once again to try to stonewall the release of these documents after all that the victims have been through.
How much will be disclosed from the Epstein files and what that material will reveal? These are the biggest questions swirling around U.S. politics. The answers could come any time now.
The law passed by Congress that Mike was talking about was signed by Donald Trump on November 19th. So the 30-day deadline imposed in the law is December 19th. 3 weeks from today. One issue that survivors of the abuse are worried about is privacy. They say that when files from Epstein's estate were recently released by Congress, many names of victims were unredacted. Now, a judge is asking the Justice Department to explain how they will protect those identities when it releases its files. Pope Leo XIV is making his first trip abroad since his election in the spring. Briar Stewart looks at the historically significant reason behind his choice of Turkey and his call for peace in global conflicts and the joy expressed by many who met him.
Just before Pope Leo's arrival, sidewalks aren't crowded with worshippers, but heavily armed officers. Others perch on rooftops as the pontiff is whisked in.
We're from Canada.
This Canadian couple on vacation was hoping to get a chance to see the first American pope.
There's something about him, there's an aura that you trust, and I trust him completely. And yeah.
And the Americans need him more than ever.
They didn't see him, but others invited from across Turkey did.
I kiss him, and there's the feeling that is you cannot understand. It's like the spirits came on me.
Traveling abroad has become a big part of the Pope's role, and some say his decision to come to Turkey, a country where the majority of the population is Muslim, sends a message about the importance of building bridges. This region is a key location when it comes to the history of Christianity. The Pope came to Turkey to commemorate the 1700th anniversary of a landmark event known as the Council of Nicaea. He was joined by other religious leaders. Part of the papal mission, continuing to try to heal the long-standing historical divide between the Orthodox and Catholic churches.
We must strongly reject the use of religion for justifying war, violence, or any form of fundamentalism.
A message that resonates in many corners, particularly in this country. Canon Gürdal is part of Turkey's newest Christian church, the first to be built in around 100 years. One of the most important messages the Pope can give is peace, he said, adding that he wants to see that in both Gaza and Ukraine. Wars that have played out beyond this country, but felt here, as Turkey is part of the negotiations aimed at ending both conflicts. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Istanbul.
Coming up, a school in England sends its mascot to new heights.
Little teddy bear has been on quite the adventure.
His unexpected journey next in our moment. This is Bradfield, the teddy bear from a school in England. He got a bigger adventure than he asked for after venturing to new heights for his school's science fair. Bradfield slipped off his harness on a high-altitude balloon, falling from more than 20 kilometers up in the air. Now, the search for Bradfield is on. His adventure of a lifetime makes our moment.
That little teddy bear has been on quite the adventure. We genuinely didn't expect for him to fall off. We ended up strapping one of our school teddy bears to a high-altitude balloon. So we had 350 children cheering on as Bradfield Bear in his uniform rose up into the sky like a celebrity 27 kilometers above Earth. One moment he's there and the next he's gone. Bradfield Bear slipped his harness and it's kind of like a tiny teddy bear cliffhanger. A proper gasp when our children watched that moment. It was a real shock and a worry. We tracked him and were able to kind of predict where the equipment landed, but that had a parachute. Bradfield Bear didn't have a parachute. He's pretty small and the countryside is very big. We've been trying to track him down. We know that he's resilient and he will be absolutely fine. We're hoping for a little Christmas miracle. Let's hope that his curious spirit will mean that he'll plot his next adventure to find his way back here.
Now, Bradfield did get up pretty high enough that there was actually a little bit of frost on the tip of his nose before he fell. And they say they know roughly where Bradfield landed, the region, but they don't know specifically where he might be. So Ever the learning experience, the school is thinking about planning a field trip with students to go and track down their adventurous bear. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. I'm Erica Johnson in Vancouver. Take care.